I am not even sure what to say anymore, except the cardiac Bears were at it again. And this time they were able to pull out another victory, another big time victory against the Green Bay Packers. No bigger than in the wild card game in Soldier Field. A crazy comeback, finishing off a 31-27 victory at Soldier Field Saturday night. And we are here to break it all down on the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, heartlandsignal.com, WSBC 1240 AM, and of course on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with the marvelous one, Dan Marver and Devin Tingle. And it was a game that was an entire season's worth of drama, an entire season's worth of storylines, and the ending of this story, of this wild card matchup, of the third round of this trilogy between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur and Ben Johnson, Jordan Love and Caleb Williams once again came down to a final possession. This was another one of these moments where a Bears Packers game was coming down to the wire. It was a game that had a lot of weird moments, had a lot of moments that both teams couldn't take advantage of, and both teams did take advantage of certain moments. It was times where we saw Matt LaFleur do things that he has done over the last, 7 years, that his team has not won a Super Bowl, that he has been the seventh seed. He hasn't won the division in how many years? And then Ben Johnson showing his rookie-ness, if you will, as a head coach. We're going to break that all down. But I think the one thing I want all of us to take a second, whether you're watching us on YouTube earlier on or you're listening to us on terrestrial radio on WCPT, is to take a moment of appreciation, to breathe, to really understand what you just saw and try to put into context the entire story of this season and how you'll remember it. Of course, the ultimate cherry, right? It would be if they get to the NFC Championship game, if they find a way to get to Santa Monica, if they get to find a way to get to the Super Bowl. But already, you know what the narrative of the 2025 season is. The year of the Packers matchup, the year the Chicago Bears showed up, and more than importantly, the year where it wasn't just a fluke, that they legitimately are in every single game. And we saw that play out on Saturday night at the Lakefront. An unbelievable game, a lot of things to break down. I'm going to throw it to you first, Marver. Your initial thoughts on what you saw coming out of a big time NFC wildcard victory for the Chicago Bears over the Green Bay Packers.
Well, for a while, it looked like when we were tied with three scores each, and it was 21-6, 21-9, I mean, it looked like we were behind the eight ball again. But I guess we've learned to never count the Bears out. And then they took the lead 4-3 on scores at 21-16. Then the most odd kickoff, it put the Packers back in position to score again, and they did. And so now it looked pretty hopeless at 27-16, missed an extra point. But again, Caleb Williams, you have to give him credit. And hit the key pass to win the game to Moore. Incredible. I mean, the defense didn't show up for most of the game, but they made some good plays when they had to. They stopped the Packers' final attempt to win the game in the last seconds. So give them credit. And, the Bears are on their way to the next round. So who can complain about that?
And I think it was, as you mentioned, when you see something like the defense in this game, and we're going to throw it to Devin, because I know Devin, throughout the entire game, we were texting and we were talking about specifically how this defense was just giving up big yards and big plays. And you had people like Matthew Golden getting a touchdown. You had Jaden Reed getting a touchdown. You had Christian Watson getting a touchdown. They completely just spread the ball around. And like, that was the one thing we knew going into this game. Jordan Love, before he had that concussion in week 16, was on an absolute heater. We know Matt LaFleur is a hell of a coach. We know now, which is it's crazy enough, right? Like, before I throw it to you, Devin, bringing up Matt LaFleur and Ben Johnson. And, we were talking about Dennis Allen and his defense, so many things being exposed in this game, if you will. Now it looks like Matt LaFleur is going to be on the hot seat. But this entire game, Matt LaFleur's offense was absolutely shredding, no pun intended, the Chicago Bears defense. And we have to give credit where credit's due. We like Marver said, that they were, when it mattered, they got the stops when they needed to, and they got lucky that McManus missed as many field goals as he did. But Devin, right to you, going to you at this point with seeing how that defense played when they had to show up. They did, losing CJ Edwards. We saw Jaquan Brisker get on the turf, getting Kyle Gordon back though, sealing Jalen Johnson out there. Like, what were your initial thoughts on how this defense was playing, and yet the Bears finding a way to walk away with such an emotional victory?
Well, first off, Mercado, Cardiac Bears, you need to trademark that because I would buy that t-shirt. I would rock that because that's what it's been this entire season. I don't know about Matt LaFleur, but Brandon McManus, he better be on the hot seat. Heck, I hope they take the team bus and leave him here and make him walk home if you're a Packers right now. But this defense definitely gave me, I think, some cardiac, definitely feeling those, pains in my chest. Everyone else on the couch was calm. I was not. That's what I get when I was watching with two women who really don't care about football, but like seeing me get really into things. And this defense definitely had a lot of just kind of problem. Just this, it's one of those things we've talked about a lot because the Bears defense has been, people have been saying, oh, these have been all season. This team has been so up and down with defense lately. It's been very disappointing. I remember we were texting each other joking. It's like, have they said Montez Sweat's name once tonight? I'm like, I think we made the introduction they did. And of course, at the very end, knocking that ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands. Of course, and it was just in that such a sachet toward a moment. It was very much stressful there, Mercado, because this game never felt like it was over until it was over for the Green Bay Packers, at least. For the Bears, there are a lot of moments where I'm like, this is it. Even when they took the lead, I'm like, they're going to blow it again because they let Jordan Love march down the field. One thing the Bears can do with the Packers that I think is great is they can always stop Josh Jacobs, the guy I wanted them to draft, but I mean to sign, but instead they signed, DJ Moore, where my number 4 right there.
Or
DJ
DeAndre Swift.
Moore, Josh
DeAndre
Jacobs.
Swift. He's
Where
exciting.
am I, DeAndre Swift? I'm all there.
Yeah.
DJ Moore, the touchdown night was a lot of fun. DeAndre Swift touching a lot. I was talking about the defense. I am so sorry I got sidetracked. Everyone's scatterbrained, but we're just definitely seeing a team where we're seeing a little bit of the flaws exposed here. But we definitely saw that with the game against the 49ers. This defense can give up a lot of points, but the 49ers also saw the Bears could score a lot of points here. So now if the defense isn't going to step up, the offense needs to keep stepping up. And that's my biggest fear going into the next round against either the Rams or the 49ers.
So I think there's a few things that we can now talk about for a few minutes, and it's not going to be so hard to talk about, or it won't be such a hard pill to swallow, or it won't leave a bitter taste in our mouth, because as we are breaking down a 31-27 victory as the Chicago Bears beat the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round at Soldier Field Saturday night, right here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch, we're breaking it all down. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with Devin Tingle and Dan Marver on WCPT 820 AM, heartlandsignal.com, WSBC 1240 AM Chicago, and of course on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. So let's talk about kind of the two storylines I think that were going to be the biggest thing we would have been talking about right here in this post-game show, the unofficial post-game show in the basement of the basement of WCPT. And it would have been the thing that would have been the driving force over the next few weeks. The first one being Caleb Williams' play up until he kind of took over this offense, put their stamp in it. You had that Luther Burden play in which an interception happened, and it seemed like it was a wrong route ran by a rookie receiver in a big time game, and that's going to happen. And luckily they were able to overcome that. And you had one play in the end zone where on fourth down he has, I believe it was another interception, but you have DJ Moore slipping in the end zone. So there were moments like that in which Caleb was going to get a lot of heat for, and it was circumstances within the game that determined those things that were behind his stat sheet. The other thing that I think a lot of people were going to put a big pin on, we're going to put a big circle on, were the Ben Johnson calls on fourth down. And we talked about it through, off mic. We talked about it through text messages, and I think it was a conversation over social media. A lot of those times, yeah, modern NFL coaches, modern NFL teams go for it. And when you do the math, right, and you're going to put yourself through that stress of, well, had they gone for this or had they gone for this, and if you add it together, they would have been up by 1 at this point, or they would have been tied at this point. The flow of the game matters. At that moment, when the Bears are going for it on fourth down at their own 35, 36, that defense wasn't stopping anybody. And we also need to keep in context when the defense was getting 3 and outs, was keeping the Packers offense in check for the most part towards that later half of the second half, the game did feel like it was kind of over, right? Like the Packers were just kind of cruising and we're going to try to bleed as much clock. And as soon as it got a little bit tight, the Bears went out and right away gave up another touchdown to an open receiver for the Green Bay Packers. So I think that's also something that we need to be fair about. I think it's fair to criticize Ben's play calling throughout this entire game. I did not think Ben called a good game, especially in that first half, especially when they were in the red zone. But I do believe being aggressive and understanding the flow of an individual game and knowing how important this game is, because there's not another one if you lose. I give him that break of calling those fourth downs. Because had they worked, what is the joke, Marver? We always say, right? He's a genius now because it worked out. It worked out for him. But I can understand the arguments or the counter conversation that some people would have for it. But I believe all in all, Ben Johnson did not have a great game that we are used to. But he has also been the guy that has put this coaching staff together, has built this roster and team together, that even as bad of a game that they played for 45 minutes, in the last 15 minutes, not only were they in it, look at that final score. Did you think it was going to be 31-27? That the Bears were going to move up and down the field to a defense that had kept them in check for the most part the entire season? Like, that is as bad as he may have Ben Johnson may have called this game. And as bad as some of those fourth downs may have seemed, we have to give credit for the way this team has been coached and the culture that have allowed them to be what we call the cardiac Bears. Marver, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of thoughts. Number one, I have no argument with going for fourth down when you're not at your own 35. That essentially moved the game from 14-6 to 21-6. And that was a problem. In terms of cardiac Bears, I'm in the perfect place to watch the game. I'm at the Endeavor emergency room in Skokie, so I was in the right place for a cardiac Bears game. And we can tell more about that story sometime because it's too embarrassing. And number three, I'm not sure if Sweat really knocked the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands tonight, like Devin suggested, but maybe that will happen in 2 weeks. Okay, so
Jordan Love, yes. Yeah.
so he said Hurts.
Thank you, Robert.
So maybe you'll delete that. So in any event, all in all, I mean, it's almost a miracle in some of the that they were able to recover from. It looked like 20. They got another field goal, 21-9. I mean, now it's like I said, it was 3 scores to 3 scores, and then 21-16, and now the 5-point deficit is manageable, but right away it's 27-16. So and then they managed to make it 27-24. So they were within a field goal, and we thought a field goal would be enough. Lo and behold, touchdown to Moore, 31-27. Unbelievable. I mean, it just seemed like Jordan Love was going to be able to do what he needed to do, even at the end there, where he essentially grounded the ball in the end zone, where it could have been intercepted, but who cares at that point with 0-0-0. But close, very close game. Another great Packer Bear game, and you have to give credit where credit is due. I think Caleb Williams has proved himself to be a big time quarterback when it matters.
And when it matters, we mentioned it here, right? Like the play of Caleb Williams, the defense, when it mattered the most, did they get a stop? Were they able to bend? Were they breaking? And we've been talking about coaching, and I want to throw to you, Devin, about that. You saw some of the calls on fourth down. Marver mentioned it, when you're on your own 35, how that changes a scoreboard, how that changes momentum. You go from 14-6, 21-6, and, this team is good enough. Now we can say it, right? This team is good enough to overcome that. A Bears offense is good enough to overcome a deficit like that. But again, you don't want to constantly be putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So your thoughts on the way Ben coached this game, but more importantly, the risk reward factor that we saw with going with so many fourth downs, trying and understanding what we were seeing from the defense at that point.
I mean, there were several times going for fourth down and screaming, "What are you doing?" Like, the Bears are being stupid in Bears fashion. I mean, the one where they went for a fourth down and they threw a pick. I'm like, well, congratulations. If you blew that play, the Packers had more yards. When you threw the pick, they had less yards. So at least you messed up. I almost said a curse word in the right way of messing up here. And yes, I'm not an NFL coach. I don't make that kind of money. I don't make those decisions. And crime in Chicago is the lowest it's been since 1956. So Ben Johnson, you are doing this city one damn good favor. So I can't really get too mad at you about there. But as we did talk about, we had a text message, and Mercado said it best that Ben Johnson was trying to be cute a lot of times here, and I definitely felt that was a lot of the, vibe for a lot of those fourth downs. They were trying to do it not so much to get that extra yard, but to do it, to see cute, do something different. And the Packers are onto that because, as we've learned, every Bears coach, going back to Matt Nagy, tried to keep going for those fourth downs. They don't always work. Ben Johnson's been way more successful than all those guys going for fourth down. Been way more successful as a coach to begin with there, Mercado and Marvelous. And it's one of those things. This was not a very good. The first half, especially, Mercado said it best. There were so many just sloppy decisions. I don't know if the cold was getting to him or what. I made a joke that in the locker room, he took his shirt off and screamed, "Get your head out of your buttocks," except I didn't say the word buttocks. We're on the radio, and I don't know if I can say that word in that sense. And maybe that was the halftime speech there. And it was just very much the defense being kind of shaky, but the offense doing what it does best in the fourth quarter. And it makes me wonder if they really are just kind of waiting until the end here. But this is one game where I'm not going to say good, better, best, because yes, they beat the Packers. Yes, they proved they're a good team. But this team, even up to the fourth quarter on that game-winning drive, did not feel like good, better, best. But Marvelous, when I said Montez Sweat knocked the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, that was not a prediction. It
Oh,
was a spoiler.
You're projecting. Okay.
Projection is an interesting word, right? Because there was a lot of projection in this game as we're breaking down the Chicago Bears beating the Green Bay Packers 31-27 at Soldier Field in the NFC wild card round right here on WCPT 820 AM, heartlandsignal.com, WSBC 1240 AM. You are listening to the Sports Cubicle here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing to us at the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Shivari throughout the entire show. And the projection was the past sports trauma, the PTSD, if you will, just everything that was experienced of the former Packers Bears lore. And what we saw in this one was the emotional toll this game, I think, took on not just Bears fans, but I think both Bears and Packers players, personnel, coaching staff. This game did have a certain emotion to it. Earlier on Saturday, we saw a really interesting, fascinating, well-played game between the Carolina Panthers and the LA Rams. And emotionally, it had its own stake because it's still an NFL playoff game. There's only one of those. If you win, you advance. And if you lose, you're done. And with all that and the danger of the game itself, there's always high stakes. But when it's a division rival, when it's a historic rival, when it's one where over the last 2 years, the games have been competitive, when you have coaches that people tout, when you have talent that people are high on, and it delivers, there's a certain amount of emotional bank that you have to give up. There's just so much that's different about it. So what I find fascinating is we get to talk about the divisional round now. We get to talk about the potential Eagles, and we get to talk about the potential Rams matchup. And that emotionally will not be the same. It will be much more business-like. This wasn't a business game. This wasn't a business trip. This was a high school homecoming game. This was a Big Ten SEC, big-time college football rival. This was a championship game in most other sports or sports fandoms. And you did that in the first round of the playoffs. And not only was it all that before kickoff, the game had all that. So I think that's what's going to be interesting to see. All that now behind them, how do they handle the divisional round? Because while saying that, they put up 25 points in the fourth quarter. That's not luck. That's not by mistake. And that's against a defense and a defensive coordinator that have done a really good job against you, that have done a really good job without Micah Parsons. And they have lost some steam, but you don't want to take anything away from either one of these teams. So I think perception and what became reality in this Bears-Packers matchup is so fascinating because it's so multi-layered. And I think we could talk about it all. We could talk it for so long, but as we're running up against the clock here on the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820, I want to just throw it to each one of you guys for just a minute or two, kind of your final thoughts. I don't know if you want to talk about the emotion of Packers-Bears, the trilogy, how it ended, what it means moving forward. If you want to talk about the potential Eagles-Rams matchup, which we'll know more about on Monday. But either way, I can honestly admit an emotional Saturday as the Cubs have some big news over the last few days, and then it being capped off with this Bears victory. I'll start with you then, Marver. Your final
Sure.
thoughts on what was a crazy Saturday night in the city of Chicago, sports world wise.
Well, it seemed, I mean, it was just another almost typical Bears game in terms of coming down to some who made the plays at the very end. And we actually will know tomorrow after the Eagles play the 49ers, because, they reseed after in terms of Seattle will be number one. So they'll play the lowest seed, which would presumably would be either the, San Francisco if they were to win. I mean, because they'd be 6, or Los Angeles because they'd be 4. Because if Philadelphia wins, then you'll have 1, 2, 3, and whatever. So that would mean the Eagles. So it really comes down to the fact that if the Eagles are able to win their game tomorrow, the Bears play the Eagles, it seems to me, and then the Rams would play Seattle. So it will all be known tomorrow. And we already had that Black Friday game against the Eagles, and that was pretty exciting. This year, we actually didn't play the Rams, so that would be quite interesting too. One other fact to note is that because of the Bears winning the division, there won't be so many games next year where the fans and the media can say, "Oh, we beat a bad team," because now they're going to have to play divisional winners, such as Philadelphia, which they played this year, obviously, and Seattle, who they didn't play, and the woebegone South winners, Carolina. But it's going to be interesting to see what kind of changes they make over the offseason too. I mean, it's too soon. Had they lost, we'd really be talking about it. But I think that some of the weaknesses did show up. We talked about the fact, the problems with a little, somewhat with the defense and the O-line, et cetera, et cetera. But the running game wasn't as spectacular as it has been either. So there's some things that they can improve on for the next round, but there is a next round. It's a home game, and it's we haven't experienced this in Chicago in recent years, so we should honor it and remember it and take pride in it, since Chicago is really a football town.
Dev, final thoughts on what has been a season and a night and a game we will never forget.
I'm Marver is going to correct me if I am wrong here, but I believe the last time the Bears made it to the division round, that was 2006, 2007, the same year they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Broncos.
2010 when they beat Seattle.
2010, that's right. They get the color on the bike game. Yes, when I saw Caleb hobble and I was worried.
Who was the team they lost to that year in 2010?
The Green Bay Packers, which I was getting deja vu. I'm like, is Tyson Bagent going to come in, outshine best as he can, and make people think maybe, just maybe? This was definitely an up and down game, Mercado. My blood pressure is probably through the roof multiple times here, as this team does what it does best, the cardiac Bears. And it was very much kind of like the Lions game, except they managed to pull something out of there. What's a lot faster and sooner here. There's a lot we got to work on here. I was texting you guys. The defense was like Swiss cheese. It was almost like, oh, man, the Packers really want to do this here. Got Caleb Williams running like he's Michael Vick, not because he's trying to rush, because he's trying not to get hit. The amount of times where I'm like, where did that dude come from? And he's getting ready to knock Caleb on his what. But that's what we got to get a little work on. The O-line needs to get some practice in the defense. Defense needs to be in there every single gosh darn day, working overtime until the day before or on travel days. But let's be real here. But it's just it's exciting. Definitely. I don't know if I'm going to get to sleep tonight. I'm so through the roof here as I was so up and down. I've been hearing fireworks all night long here. And we saw a lot of weaknesses from the Bears here, but they came in the fourth quarter, and I'm going to do it. Iceman, Caleb Williams, he came in. There were a lot of men in the crowd taking their shirts off because Ben Johnson, because I don't know, want to be crazy? Never did in the negative 20-degree days, but I digress. I get sidetracked. I'm all over the place today because the Bears win against the Pack. As I kept saying, if the Bears were to lose in the playoffs, that would suck. A Bears losing to the Packers in the playoffs, insult to injury. But the Bears beating the Packers in the playoffs, when, as you said, in 2011, when they got whooped and the Packers won the Super Bowl that same year, not a fan of. This was definitely one of those things where it's like, oh, how the tables have turned, and the Bears are definitely a good team here. And we can't. What now, naysayers? I just want some. What now? What is it now? Because so many people said the Bears were going to get knocked out in the first round, and here we are going to the division round. So I'll end on this. What now?
What now is a date in the divisional round with either the LA Rams or the Philadelphia Eagles. And either way, I will say this much as we wrap it up. The Chicago Bears, right now, if you're asking me to put my mortgage, my daughter's college tuition on the line, their defense is not going to allow them to win a Super Bowl. It's just hard to. It's going to be hard to beat some of these teams when you allow them to do whatever they want up and down the field. But if you let this team hang around for 45, 50, 55 minutes, do it at your own behest. Do it at your own risk. Because if you allow Caleb Williams to stay in a game, if you allow Ben Johnson to call one more unique play, if you allow the 2025, 2026 NFC North champion Chicago Bears an opportunity to not only tie, but win a game, not only are they going to do it, they're going to take it and they're going to run with it and they're going to win. And we just saw them do it at the biggest stage that's been presented to them. So at the very least, even if the ride ends in the divisional round, even if the ride ends in the championship round, heck, even if it ends in the Super Bowl, you will always remember the year the Chicago Bears beat the Green Bay Packers 2 out of 3 times, and the third time being in the NFC wildcard round. Celebrate Chicago. Be safe. Take care of each other. Enjoy a Chicago Bears wild card round victory over the Green Bay Packers, 31-27 for the Marvelous One, Dan Marver. For Devin Tingle, I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Good, better, best. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, HeartlandSignal.com, WSBC 1240 AM, Chicago, and right here on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.